Well, good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this. Thank you so much for deciding to spend the next 15 or so minutes with us here today. I am actually very excited for this word that I get to bring. We're going to be looking at Genesis because I was reminded of just how cool these opening lines to our scripture is, and the historical context behind it, and why it was written, and why it was written down the way that it was. Why do we have two creation narratives right back to back? So I am very excited that we get to go through it today. So, if you would like to follow along, I am going to read the first chapter and a little bit into the second. So I'm sure for many of you, this is a passage that you're going to be very familiar with. So I would encourage you to just relax, take a nice deep breath, relieve any tension that you are finding in your body, pull your shoulders back, unclench your jaw, and hear the word of the Lord today. So Genesis 1, and I am reading from the NRSV version if you care to follow along that way. So it says this: "In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, 'Let there be light.' And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, 'Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters.' So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, 'Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear.' And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, 'Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it.' And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, 'Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth.' And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, 'Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky.' And so God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, 'Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth.' And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, 'Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind.' And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day, God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. A long passage, but I hope that you are able to hear it with fresh ears this day. I wanted to compare this passage that we had just heard, to the Babylonian creation myth. This was actually what got me excited to write, got me excited to say what I have to say this day, because I heard someone talking about the Enuma Elish and the differences that it has compared to our Genesis account. These main characters within the Babylonian creation myth are Apsu and Tiamat. They are these chaotic, swirling waters that separate, Apsu being the fresh, sweet water that we can drink, Tiamat being the salty, bitter water that we can find in the oceans. We also have Ea, and we have Marduk. So Tiamat and Apsu separate and come together to create the younger gods. And it says that Apsu becomes enraged and annoyed by these younger gods. It says that they bother him during his work during the day and are too loud so he cannot sleep at night. So Apsu decides to destroy those that he created. Tiamat, in response, is fearful and afraid, doesn't want their children to die, so she warns them. And one of the younger gods, Ea, rises up, casts a spell on Tiamat, and Tiamat dies. Sorry, that's my bad. Apsu dies. In Apsu's death, Tiamat is enraged herself. Not wanting anyone to die, she is now furious at her own children for killing her lover Apsu. It is here that Marduk, the son of Ea, rises up and then kills Tiamat. Marduk splits Tiamat in half, and out of her body he creates the heavens and the earth and becomes the ruling god over all. The Babylonian epic, this explains creation. Their thoughts and their understandings of the world was purely through separation and destruction. Genesis, by contrast, as we read, has a God that creates out of nothing, not out of destruction, but just out of pure volition and power by speaking things into existence. We also get to see that this creation doesn't annoy God, but God over and over again sees that it is good. And God continues this work of creation because he sees how good it is and wants to continue that goodness. So again, this gets me so excited to have these two creation epics that try to give explanation and context and understanding to why are we here? What is our purpose? What do the gods care about us? What is life? Where can we find meaning? I think in light of this comparing and contrasting, some of our scarier questions become a little lighter. We can get bogged down some days by big words like inerrancy or infallibility. Is the Bible strictly literal? Is it purely poetry? Is it somewhere in the middle? But when we compare and understand that it is just a cry of humanity to understand our place in the universe, we can take these bigger narrative pieces and apply those to our lives. Regardless of where you are at today in these bigger life questions, I want us to focus on God's agency in this story. How this Babylonian epic involves death, separation, power struggle. On the other hand, God creates from nothing and out of love. It is so much easier to base a society around strength of body, might is right, when you have a beginning that is steeped in this tradition. It is much harder to base our current understanding of humanity and to build a society upon that understanding when we have a beginning that sees humans as the greatest good. This makes it so much harder to legitimize the enslavement of others and the mistreatment of other people. When we notice that God sees humans as pure and wonderful and good, why would we do any different? Interestingly, both narratives do both begin with chaos, whereas in Babylon, it was the chaos of these waters that separate and then come together, and that's how creation kind of begins. In Genesis, God is first. It is not chaos that brings forth God, but God is there. God sees chaos. And God is not born of chaos, but God actually has control over chaos. It's not chaos that brings about these two gods. It is God separating chaos, ruling over it, and making purpose out of something that might be difficult to grasp. It is no coincidence that chaos is represented by water, both in fresh water that we can find in rivers and salt water that is found in oceans. How often do you find yourself at the banks of these waters and being fearful, not knowing what might happen? Rivers flood all the time. You can get pulled away in the ocean in the blink of an eye. So it makes sense that we would ascribe water to chaos, and that these bigger than ourselves, bigger than life itself, we would ascribe that as being God. But the Bible, I think, is this beautiful library of books, not because it separates itself from human wondering and curiosity, but because it engages it. Where we are fearful of water and see chaos and see divine behind it, Genesis is a reminder that God is in control, that as big as these things are, God placed them here for a reason and placed humanity above it. Tides ebb and flow, rivers flood and dry up. They are also the source of life. Water is also temperamental, so we can totally understand how this Babylonian creation myth would ascribe temperamental gods to it. But since God does not come from this chaos, God is not temperamental. We have a God that can control this chaos. God is stable, God is strong, and God is able to withstand the chaos of our own lives, whatever it might be. This is a passage I have read over and over and over and over again. And for me, and I hope for you, it gains a little bit more life in this cultural and historical understanding. Because this story was written during a time that Israel was actually conquered by Babylon. And what Babylon would do is they would conquer a nation and they would separate its people. Because again, this is in their own beginnings. They would separate people so that their identity was no longer, I am an Israelite captive by Babylon. It became, I am a Babylonian. But Babylon was smart, and they wanted to keep the smart people together. So all of the religious elite, those who could read and write, were taken together, and they were afraid themselves. In a new foreign land, a different power reigning over them. And out of this fear, they wrote things down. They took their knowledge of God, the story of their people, and instead of becoming Babylonians, they remembered who they were and they held on tighter. They wrote down their own creation epic from a place of experience, from a place of a God that cares, from a God that has watched over their ancestors, from a God that sees this chaos and doesn't wait to rise up out of it and create some good from it, but a God that is older, stronger, and more capable than we could ever imagine. And so they wrote it down. And that's some of the lasting power that we have in the Bible, that it recognizes and addresses the fear and the struggle of humanity and doesn't shy away from it, but shows how God is so much greater and stronger, and how much God cares for every single minute detail that we interact with every single day. The story of Israel and Judaism is also the story of Christianity. And I think we can sometimes divide the Old Testament and the New Testament into the Old Testament being this wrathful version of God and the New Testament being the lovey-dovey God. And here we see at the very beginning of our scriptures is a God that does nothing out of spite or temperamental, but a God who does things for the good of creation and out of the joy of creation and to have something to love. And so we have scripture that starts from a place of genuine care. Again, scripture reflects the lived experiences of the writers. This isn't simply propaganda on the part of Israel, because they could have written anything. They could have written down a God that triumphs over evil. And instead, they chose one that is in control and calm and doesn't hold power, but gives it to humanity to oversee this creation. And this is the knowledge that we have of a kind and gentle God, that the Israelites, in the moment of fear, fell back on their lived experiences of a God who cares. When they were surrounded by a pantheon of cruel and capricious gods, when life wasn't easy, they fell back on what they knew. And so I hope that today, as you go forward in life, whether you are experiencing the calm, gentle presence of God, or if you are experiencing the chaos of waters swirling around you, I hope you can fall back on the knowledge of a kind and gentle God that sees you as good, as very good, and wants nothing more than to be with you. That's all I got. I hope you have a good day.